Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we are here today to speak about our favorite subject here on VCTV, and that is blockchain, and particularly around what's happening in blockchain from an investment standpoint around emerging markets throughout the world. A lot has happened over the past 6 months in particular in emerging markets, more than we've seen in the decade previously around blockchain. And so we're here to speak about that, and we'll probably pull fintech, including decentralized finance, into the conversation as well with our guests who are joining us today. But before we get started, as I love to do on this particular topic when we speak about it here on VCTV, is share a few major headlines so that you have a quick insight as what's going on in the world, just to set the stage for us today. Big news yesterday. Coinbase acquired Bison Trails. This was a huge acquisition in the space, as Bison Trails, known for its node service or nodes as a service. This is a huge monumental shift in the landscape. We know Coinbase has filed their S1 looking to go public, but also to acquire such a big company, both as a brand, but also a foundational piece of the blockchain landscape, is a huge milestone to where they may be going into the future. So stay tuned with more of that as well. We haven't gotten the exact numbers. We know it's north of 80 million US, but we'll leave that for the press to put out there further. DeFi Pulse as well has reported that total lock value, TLV, in DeFi has actually surpassed 25 billion and then regressed back to about 23.7 billion. So we're continuing to see progression week over week as we continue to talk about this topic here on VCTV, and expect that to continue to rise over time. Again, we'll be talking about that. And last but not least, a big shout out to Masari and the company and team over there who dropped a huge 100-page report late last night all around what's happening throughout Asia in the crypto and blockchain markets as well. So if you haven't already checked that out, we'll put that in the show notes. Again, a big shout out to the team over there as well, because I've already started reading it. And honestly, I'm surprised I could go to sleep last night. There was too much good information. But with that being said, that's just a few facts for you out there in the world. Also check out Ford and what they're doing around their new birth certificates for vehicles as well, to authenticate where vehicles are coming from, along with the parts and supplies within theirs. But before we go any further, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear today, click subscribe, give us a share. Also check out the archive to hear more about blockchain, fintech, and some of the topics we'll be speaking about today, along with from all of our speakers who will be joining us in just a moment. Either their one-on-one conversations with myself and the rest of the team, or on other panels as well, including the entire VCTV family of speakers and investors as well. And if you'd like to be on a show like today to share your thoughts and insights around different technologies, industries, and regions around the world, reach out. Same with you, entrepreneurs. We'd love to have you on our virtual stage to pitch us your company, product, or service, as one of our speakers has in the past as well, and did a fantastic job. A great example to tune into as well. Do reach out. We'd love to find the right spot for you instead of investors to get real-time feedback, and also build foundational relationships and exposure to the entire VCTV community who's active, live, and engaging every single day with us here. And speaking of that team, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. I'm your host, Kyle. Let's go ahead and dive in and introduce today's speakers as we begin to talk about investing in blockchain throughout the emerging markets around the world. Brett, welcome back to you and your special guest. A quick intro and background for the audience.
Sure. So Brett Noyce, founder and director of Undentures, early stage investment syndicate, highly focused on the fintech space. We've worked with a lot of companies that are focused on the emerging markets. Pardon me, and my little boss here, Davis here. So, and our CEO, Davis Reed, will be joining us. We'll try to keep him to a dull roar. Previous experience working for Tim Draper brought me into the blockchain space, and we worked with quite a few companies back as early as 2014 that were building technologies using blockchain in the fintech space. Yeah, I think in other work, we've run an incubator program where we also focused on blockchain companies that were building products for largely for emerging markets.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brett. Ifran, welcome back to the show as well. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I'm super glad to be in this very interesting panel with Brett and Matthew. Short background about myself: I'm the managing director of Irfan Holdings. Irfan Holdings is a early stage investment arm of some of the activities that I do. I'm also at the board of a number of venture capital firms. This is a very near and dear topic to me. In fact, the word blockchain and emerging market is synonymous to my career. I started about a decade ago in this space. It was from this very particular industry where I started from. I spent almost half my life over there. So would love to talk about this topic and super interested to hear from the rest of the panelists. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ifran. And last but not least, Matthew, welcome back to the show. Short little introduction and a little background as well.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. Great to be here. I have a bad signal today, so I'm hoping that the video will hold up. Ironically, I thought this was about emerging markets, but Brett thought it was about emerging infants or something, and he brought his own with him. For my part, I manage Fifth Era and Blockchain Co-Investors. Blockchain Co-Investors is the leading venture fund of funds and co-investment program. We're investors in more than 250 blockchain companies around the world, and through them about 20 or more blockchain unicorns. So that's my active day job. And then I'm also chairman of Securitizing Europe, vice chairman of SFOX, the leading crypto prime dealer, and also of the Universal Protocol Alliance, where I'm chairman. So in terms of emerging markets, we do invest in emerging markets. I would say it's definitely not the focus of what we do, but I thought it would be interesting to join, and I'm hoping to learn quite a lot from Brett and Irfan, and hopefully I can contribute something too.
Absolutely. Thank you all three for joining us today. And I know all of you have insights and would love to hear kind of your view of current state of things. When it comes to emerging markets, we've seen a number of highlights around India. For instance, we've got Kasha, who's launched a number of Bitcoin ATMs and continue to expand. We've seen a number of policy changes in and around blockchain throughout India, same within China with BSN, the Blockchain Service Network. We've got a number of Southeast Asia or just general Asia countries putting a lot of policy and also projects forward around the blockchain space and leveraging that within their general infrastructure. On the LATAM side, so Latin America, we've continued to talk about that here on VCTV on the opportunities as it comes from decentralized finance to fintech proper and all that's happening within the region. Africa, Matthew and all of us again have talked about as well, the different opportunities that are happening throughout Africa and how important blockchain has been into that really the next decade and 50 years, as Matthew has pointed out before, that this is a 50-year type process versus just a 1 or 2 year, how important that plays into their infrastructure as well. And so just kind of setting the stage, Ifran, let's start it with you. I mean, watching blockchain flourish over the past decade, and now seeing how this has really transformed, become something more real than it had been in the past, and looking at it for the next decade ahead, how do you see it playing a role, blockchain as a whole, into emerging markets around the world from your view?
Great question, Kyle, and thanks for handing me the torch. First of all, I don't know where to start, but maybe I'll start with a very personal story and why I say that this particular space that got me into this industry to begin with. So about 12 years ago, I'm originally from Bangladesh. I started working in the digitization of public services with the government of Bangladesh. Back then, the problem that we faced was the infrastructure were siloed. And the way it worked, it was not necessarily efficient or was making sense as to the problem that existed in emerging market. There are many problems in the emerging market, but organizing assets is a major problem. And so that kind of like got me interested in the blockchain space. But there is another personal reason that I have. So my family and I, we have a lot of land in that part of the world. Due to the change of the certain, the country, because the country broke from one country to another over the course of time. Personally, a huge amount of our personal assets were acquired by government, as well as unlawfully acquired by a lot of people. And the problem over there is that there's no genuine record keeping. And it's a fundamental problem over there, that you could have duplicate documentations of, of the same property belonging to 50 or 100 people. So, this kind of like the setting stone as to why I kind of like jumped into, and what got me excited about blockchain is that the amount of transformative things that it can do. Now, where it is at and how blockchain can make an impact, and Matthew is sitting on the board of, a fund of funds, and I'm sitting with a lot of, and I started also blockchain specific venture fund, right? The problem is that, obviously I'm in this part of the world, LPs don't necessarily are not necessarily interested in the emerging market because of certain factors, right? I mean, of course, there's a lot of promise, but the risk factors are also really high, rule of law, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the key aspect of blockchain being able to make transformative impact will start with the very basics, right? That includes fintech payments, that includes, public records, authentication is a major problem. I mean, some of the major things that blockchain is really good at is, is what, emerging markets, they need. They don't have an alternative right now. So supply chain is another area. There's a lot of tampering with products, etc. And these products are also exported. Even the country, just because of one particular bad actor, ends up suffering. These are just like tip of the iceberg. You could go on, and there's going to be so much more. So again, I just want to, I'm opening this discussion, would love to hear from everybody, but there's one particular thing that I always like to say, and this is a term because I wrote a paper on that I just shared with you about 2.5 years ago. And I don't like the term emerging market or emerging country, right? I call it transformative market or transformative country, because the word itself, it's not emerging out of anything, okay? It's already there. And it's going to transform. So there's a lot of room for transformation. So yeah, back to you, Kai.
Thank you, Efran. That's a great point, and also a great transition. I mean, you mentioned identity, you mentioned bringing people into, trust and verification. We're seeing a number of activities around this in Vietnam, also in South Korea, right? The South Korean government is actually bringing a lot of its citizens onto the blockchain through identity with digital driver license as well. Something we've seen happen at the end of 2020 and continuing, and now in Vietnam we're starting to see more opportunities and the like as well. And we've got a number of countries transforming, if you will, their activities, and specifically around the pandemic, around COVID, doing some track and trace, and also looking at the digital passports or vaccine passports that have been talked about and putting those on the blockchain as well. And seeing also things around like Frankfurt and other airports that are putting in place applications to do so as well. So with that, thank you, Efran. Brett, over to you. Continue the conversation. I mean, current state, how are you seeing things from blockchain to finance as a whole into transformative markets and countries?
Yes, well, I'll try to use the transformative term. So, I mean, I think there's a ton of opportunities. So kind of using kind of an example, or I think one of the great things that blockchain brings to the table is transparency and this record of truth that's often lacking in these markets. So I think that's really the fundamental, the technology brings that. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are now seeing these new opportunities to enter into markets where that piece of the, the problem was, there wasn't a technology piece that could necessarily solve that everyone kind of trusted. So I think there's kind of the big overlying opportunity. Other opportunities, whether it's blockchain or just, kind of how things are cloud-based stuff, there's a great opportunity to build neobanks, and we're seeing a lot of different, companies or founders in each kind of individual market creating neobanks to solve the individual banking issues. And what's great about that is, I always say this, like, if you were to build a bank today, you wouldn't buy a 1970s mainframe, right? So there's a lot of actual opportunity, technology advantages, and to build like a different kind of financial institution that hasn't existed, right? And kind of leapfrog, right? So you don't have to go back to the beginning and build it how, like, maybe the US or first world nations have built their infrastructure, right? You can leapfrog that, kind of jump into kind of the next stage of financial tools, products and services, right? And that's where I hope, and we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs that are seeing that opportunity and really going after it.
Thank you, Brett. Matthew, to you as well. Continuing the conversation, what are you starting to see happening? Again, as Ephraim mentioned, you and you did in your intro, you're invested in many funds. You've seen a lot of activity in this space, written a few great books, as I'll add shamelessly for you, since I've had the chance to read them. What are you seeing around the transformative markets when it comes to blockchain and what's happening or not happening as well?
Yes, so I do agree with both what Brett and Irfan just said. I would even change it up even a bit more. There's never been any monopoly on digital innovation because it's digital. And as we've gone virtual, and that isn't a recent phenomenon, I think most blockchain and crypto companies are born virtual. By definition, they're distributed groups of people, often working on open source initiatives and distributed networks. So that opportunity for anyone in the world to participate has been going up and up and up. And we have seen many great projects getting launched from many parts of the world. In addition, and I know this is a slightly different point, but for a long time, we've been outsourcing and offshoring pieces of developmental work to engineers and developers in other parts of the world, obviously in parts of Asia, in parts of Latin America, in parts of Central Europe, just to name a few. And those are very capable engineers. And so I don't think we should get too hung up in terms of the innovation around this distinction, emerging markets v non-emerging markets, and so on, or transformative markets and so on. So that's one point. The other point, I think, is the real one that Irfan was getting to, which is when it comes to jurisdictions, different jurisdictions have different rules and regulations, and different marketplaces and economies are more or less willing to embrace blockchain, crypto, and new technologies in general. And it happens to be the case that some of the emerging markets or transformative markets are most willing to embrace these technologies and are mostly in need of the innovation that they bring. And that's the old analogy of cell phones v wired phones. America built out its telecommunication network with copper, and take all this copper to do the same in Africa. So Africa had no choice but to jump to cell. And that's, I think, true in, say, banking. To have the density of bank branches and ATMs that we have in America, in Africa, is never going to be possible. So things like BitPesa play a very interesting role in Africa because they combine the not the ubiquity, but the easy access mobile with a solution to buying and selling and paying for things. And so I'm very interested in tracking innovation in emerging markets, transformative markets. I apologize, it's a new phrase for me. And I agree with Brett and Irfan that there's a lot of opportunity. I actually have a bad signal, Kyle, so I'm hoping you're hearing everything I'm saying.
Loud and clear, actually. Everything's coming through. And just to reiterate, I mean, Matthew made a great point for those who may have missed it, that, infrastructure was laid at one point in a more legacy fashion. And as countries or companies came into that transformative place, that's why go back to legacy systems. Instead, you're put into a position to go with the latest and greatest and build towards the future as well. Just to quickly sum up, but Matthew was mentioning around the telecom networks and copper versus mobile as well, and ATMs versus digital banks as well. Again, just a quick summary. But Matthew, we heard you loud and clear, and I thank you for checking in on that. And yeah, and Ifran, coming back to you, anything to add on that further, or any of the points that have been made? It seems like we're making a very clear statement that infrastructure was put into place. And now today, that infrastructure is legacy in some cases and needs to be digitized. And with that digitization comes the realization that we need to step forward and use technologies like blockchain and others that we have, and not look towards the past, but instead look to build onto the future.
No, again, thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Matthew and Brett, to reciprocate and also resonate with me with the term. I appreciate that. But that said, I think it's fairly well established, right? I mean, there is plenty of opportunity in these markets, in these parts of the world, and there's no doubt there is a need for it. Now, in terms of blockchain, there's two aspects of it that's going to play a critical role into it. One is the most important, is the community empowerment. For a long time, as I've been in this space for a while, a lot of the community drive within the decentralized space has been in places where, even when it comes to Asia, has been in the more developed parts of Asia, right? So when you say South Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, of course, is a great market, but Vietnam also has a huge direct involvement from China, and the Chinese drive itself makes a huge difference in Vietnam. But there are other places, right? I mean, and again, the community empowerment is a critical factor, as we have seen through this time within the crypto industry again and again, right? I mean, the DeFi coming in, the Ethereum's, latest round of push, it's all relative to the community. Community plays a very, very big part. There are certain new players, who are trying to drive the community. One of that, because I'm personally vested into it, is Blockstack. So that's another of a portfolio that's pushing big in the community aspect of it. But besides that, the other part is another critical factor, is the governance, right? I mean, government and regulation. This is, without doubt, the biggest, the elephant in the room, right? That we need to deal with if we are to make a difference in these markets, right? So smaller governments have been able to showcase, interestingly, what a direct jump from a legacy system to a completely digitized system. So as I mentioned, because of my personal skin in the game in terms of blockchain, and I got involved early on in a blockchain, the first land titling project in the country, Republic of Georgia. And they have piloted in the very early stages to do land title registration using blockchain. There are a few other countries, within that region, try to do something similar using blockchain, directly jumping from legacy system. One country would be the Republic of Azerbaijan. In all these places, I've been very involved in the early days. But when it comes to much larger places where the difference would make massive, business case as well as people case, right? I mean, business and people, they go hand in hand. There has been a lot of hiccups, right? I'm sure a lot of us are aware about the Aadhaar project done in India. which was a blockchain-based, identity management process. I mean, even though it was, using the latest of technology, there were hiccups. So going back to the point, of course, we have a great technology in our hand. It can make a huge difference, but technology is as good as the handler of the technology, right? So we need to know how to charter that through. And so far right now, there are positives, and we go 10 steps forward, we go 5 steps backward, and we need more champions in that space to be able to further penetrate into the market.
Absolutely. With great power comes great responsibility, as we've all been told at one point. And Ifran, with that, I want to follow up on one thing you mentioned. You mentioned a number of countries that you've looked at, or states that you've made investments in. And I think out there, one of the things that many of our viewers have questions for, and this is for each of you, is we've all made investments in transformative or emerging markets, is how do you invest into those areas, right? So if you're not in the region, you're not in the state, you're not in the republic, whatever it may be, how do you make investments on the ground from afar? And what is there certain things, advice that you may have as well around things to look at when making your first or few investments in the region? So Ifran, let's start with you, and then Brett, Matthew, I want to come to you both on this as well.
That's a great question, Kyle, and I appreciate you again giving me the torch. So for starters, as I mentioned, even though I'm on multiple boards of various capital that are here, our mandate doesn't allow us to invest directly into the emerging market. I mean, I've been pushing personally for a long time because it's my personal crusade, but I got to also listen to the LPs in the fund, right? So it cannot happen that way. So personally, I have my own investment arm. So it's sort of like a bridge between to bring a company into sort of like a structure that that certain capital funds over here would need. And what that means is that I'm on the ground in these places. I have the resources when it comes to people on the ground, network on the ground for companies to come to me. But then there is a certain tweak that we are still doing, right? We're helping this company, have jurisdiction in places where we know that we're going to be more confident in, even though they're operating in, let's say, Bangladesh, for example, but they got to be, incorporated somewhere else, if that makes sense. Because the law doesn't exist right now in a lot of places. I mean, even crypto exchanges are banned in Bangladesh, for example. India is like very difficult party. So there are some ways around this, but this is not an ultimate solution because it's harming innovation. There's only so much that I can contain, or 1% or like 100% can contain. There has to be freedom. So again, I'm going to go back, depending on whichever country you go to invest in, you got to understand their culture, their laws, etc., because they could be quite exhausting, to be honest. And so by that said, I pass it on to you, and looking forward to hearing from the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up great points of being on the ground and having those relationships. Brett, over to you.
Yeah, I guess people have different perspectives on this, but I mean, I think the fundamentals of investing, maintain. Like I think that historically, still people like to invest in companies in their backyard, or they want them to move to Silicon Valley or be US based. Those all have merits. But when you're looking at companies that are they're serving emerging markets, you kind of lose a little bit of that control, and that I think that could be kind of, I don't know, scary for investors. Kind of building on what Ifran was saying. For us, the number one thing is that, that we're working with entrepreneurs that like either are from that market, have lived in that market, understand that market, and kind of fill in the gaps, that we have in understanding how to, to navigate it, and also that they can, explain it to us and help us get comfortable with it. So that's number one. I think just maintaining the same type of stuff like trust, right? Like the same thing you would do with vetting any sort of other entrepreneur that you would invest in. Is this person someone that you feel that, that you don't need to see them and be able to walk into their business and that they're doing good work, and that, we could obviously, work with these companies, throughout the world, get on calls like this. And there's a lot of companies that we've worked with where we hadn't met them in person, until 2 or 3 years into our engagement with them. One based out of Brazil. So I think just in general, like as you think about investing in companies that are serving these markets, it's really around, how do you maintain trust, and how do you maintain that communication and understanding, and really realizing that, there's a lot of different unique challenges to each one of these markets, and making sure that you're picking the entrepreneur that knows how to best navigate that. And then, I think you have to kind of let go of a little bit of control to really let that entrepreneur run, and realize, there's a different risk reward that you would have in maybe a different market.
Absolutely. And thank you. And Matthew, to you, anything else to add?
Yes, well, again, I'm sort of agreeing with the others, but we're a fund of funds and a co-investment program. On the fund of funds side, I absolutely believe that you have to invest with the best investors. And in many geographies, the best investor is going to be a local person. They're there all the time. As Evan said, they understand complexities of the local environment, and they should have privileged access to local deal flow. In those jurisdictions around the world that have very different law to that in my case in America, that becomes even more important, because dealing with the complexities of an investment, if you don't really understand the local legal environment, is very dangerous indeed. So I'm agreeing with all of those thoughts. I would say that blockchain is a little bit different. I already said this, there are very few projects that are going to be local. And so the strategic advantages of only being local, I think, are going to be de minimis in a network distributed project. And so on the whole, I would say it's more important to have global support than to be the master of a small geography in most blockchain and crypto related endeavors. So that, but having said that, I agree with this. You need local expertise if you make a local investment.
Absolutely. And Matthew, I want to come to you for closing thoughts, as well as we're coming to the top of the hour. Anything else you want to add or advice that you'd put out there as to where the industry may be going as a whole, areas to focus on for the year ahead, and then of course where everyone can find you and all that you do?
Yes, well, I want to reiterate what I said earlier. The reason why blockchain is one of the most exciting technologies in the world for all the entrepreneurs who are listening to this broadcast is that it doesn't matter where you are. You can get active, you can participate. You may be a leader, you may not. It doesn't matter. You can join a project right now. If you're a developer, you can roll up your sleeves and start working on some protocols and some projects right now. And you don't have to wait. And it's not the traditional approach anymore. You can get a token allocation for doing great work and become very wealthy if your project succeeds. Obviously, they don't succeed. So I would say, don't let your location slow you down. The world is a very big place, and blockchain enables you to participate wherever you are. And the best protocol projects don't even know where their participants are located. And so with that, I'll hand it back to you, Carl.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matthew. Real quick, where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation or connect about your activities?
Thanks for asking. As always, subliminal advertising, just add .com to either of those, fithera.com or blockchaincoinvestors.com. Both will find me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Matthew. Appreciate it. And thank you for spending the time with us today. Brett, to you and Davis as well. Closing thoughts, and where can you be found online to continue the conversation?
Absolutely. So, I mean, my thesis for the last 4 or 5 years is really that there's big opportunity in financial inclusion, whether it's transformative markets or even the U.S. or in first world markets. So, great opportunities for both investors and entrepreneurs. So, I highly recommend pursuing those and finding business models that work that are a win-win for the customer, for the entrepreneur, for the investor. And I can be found at brnoyce at unventures.co, online at Brett Noyce, on LinkedIn at Brett Noyce, and Twitter the same, Brett Noyce. And as always, thanks, Kyle. And don't finish this without telling us more about your newsletter.
Thank you, Brett, as well. Appreciate the shameless plug back to me. Thank you. And Efron, close us out. Closing thoughts, and then where you can be found online to continue the conversation as well.
Thanks, Kyle, and thank you, Matthew and Brett, for this exciting panel. Anyone can reach me through LinkedIn or through Twitter at @SemperIrfan. I'm going to reiterate what Matthew and Brett said, right? I mean, really, as I said, about a decade ago, what got me excited in blockchain is what it could do, and for especially for entrepreneurs, right? I mean, doesn't matter where you're located, you can make a difference because that there is a problem, and that problem may not necessarily be always local. That problem could be generally a global problem. I mean, M-Pesa has shown us how financial payments could be done much better, right? I mean, a lot of the traditional institutions are trying to now incorporate things that they have learned in these markets. And so the point is that the opportunity is there. However, I will always end it with also a cautious note. Because I've always played in this market. There are also a lot of bad actors in this space, which is the reason that for a lot of time, we have a lot of, especially personally, I feel a lot of obstruction to enter into this space, even me having all the assets and the resources that you may need to operate in those space. So I hope in the coming at the dawn of this new decade, with DeFi, being very, very active, hopefully, this is a better state than the last time we had, around, Ethereum build projects or any protocol building project. So hopefully, it will be able to make difference, and there will be projects that's going to be coming up from transformative market, transforming lives, people, and the economy. Thank you. Back to you.
Wonderful, thank you. And real quick, where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation?
Twitter at @SemperIrfan or LinkedIn at Sheikh Mohammed Irfan.
Wonderful. Efron, Brett, Matthew, thank you all again very much for sharing your thoughts and insights with us today. To your audience, thank you for so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, share, and also check out the archive. Thank you, Brett. To hear more from Brett, Matthew, and Efron as well. Again, we've done fireside chats with each of them and also had them on many other panels to speak about not just today's topic, but a number of topics as well. And also to hear from more and all of our family here at VCTV of speakers and investors from around the world. And if you'd like to be on a show like today as an investor to share your thoughts and insights, whether it be around blockchain or transformative markets and other industries and technologies around the world, reach out and we'd love to find the right spot for you. Entrepreneurs, that goes for you too. We have a great virtual stage here for you to pitch your company and product or service, get real-time feedback from us as investors, and also build relationships and exposure to the entire VCTV community who's active and engaged and always willing and ready to talk as well. And for a great example on a pitch and how to formulate your first pitch with us, check out Matthew's pitch that he did for his company, which is out on the VCTV archive as well, as I pointed out earlier. And with that, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me along with my newsletter, as Brett mentioned, on Twitter, along with LinkedIn at Kyle Ellicott, and all social media platforms, as all speakers have mentioned as well. Check out Matthew's newsletter at Fifth Era and also ours at LATOKEN as well. Subscribe to get the latest and greatest in all of these industries that we continue to cover here on VCTV. And when you do reach out, make sure you add context, where you met us, where you heard from us, and what you'd like to continue the conversation about, so we can have an effective and successful conversation together. With that, I'm your host, and we'll be back here tomorrow with more VCTV. Everyone have a great day.